Assuming it is not the first turn of the duel, following main phase 1, you may enter the battle phase. The battle phase is where monsters battle, and damage is inflicted to the players, to lead towards the end of the game. You do not have to conduct your battle phase, but unless you conduct your battle phase, you cannot conduct a main phase 2. The battle phase is similar to the standby phase and end phase in that they don't do much other than what other phases do, except that you can declare battle with monsters. You can also activate trap cards, quick effects, and quick play spell cards during this phase. The battle phase has 4 parts. The first part is the start step, which is a step where you activate quick effects before you enter the battle step, which is where you choose to declare battles with monsters. If a battle successfully commences, we proceed to the damage step. Coming out of the damage step, which is where damage is calculated, we return to the battle step to declare more attacks. And once we're out of monsters that we'd like to declare attacks with, we then proceed to the end step, which is where we'd like to activate cards or effects while we're still in the battle phase before proceeding to main phase 2. The damage step in itself has 5 parts. I'll be linking to the information regarding the damage step in the description below. The fast effects timing chart still applies to the battle phase. Different steps of the battle phase may have different actions available, like there are not as many actions that do not start a chain in the battle phase, with the exception of declaring an attack, which only occurs during the battle step. So the first part of the battle phase is the start step. If the turn player says they'd like to start the battle phase, and the opponent says that is fine, you start in the start step of the battle phase in the open game state. The turn player has priority to take an action that does not start a chain, or an action that starts a chain, or to pass priority in order to attempt to get to the battle step. There aren't many actions you can take in the start step that do not start a chain unless a card resolves there. There are a couple of cards that can only be activated at the start of the battle phase, such as all of the smaller Dragon Maid cards. They all have an effect that says at the start of the battle phase, which means the start step, you can return this card to your hand and special summon a higher level Dragon Maid. Also, the quick play spell Anti-Magic Arrows also has an activation condition that can only be used at the start step of the battle phase. The start step of the battle phase is very important because often you want to be able to activate certain cards and effects prior to actually allowing a monster to declare an attack. You might want to use your Infinite Impermanence on your opponent's number 39 Utopia the Lightning before you enter the battle step, because Utopia the Lightning has an effect that says, if this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step, which means if you allow your opponent to get to the battle step where they have priority to declare an attack, you can no longer activate any cards or effects, so often it's good to use your start step to do some things before attacks are declared. After both players have activated cards or just passed to the battle step, you can select one of your monsters on your side of the field to attack with, and one monster on your opponent's side of the field to attack as its attack target. This is called declaring an attack. If your opponent does not have any monsters on the field, you can perform a direct attack. If the attack is successful and nobody has any cards that they'd like to activate, you enter the damage step, which has several steps and damage is calculated in this step of the battle phase. You then proceed to the battle step again, where you can choose to attack with your next monster. And you'll repeat this until you run out of monsters to attack with, or you choose to no longer continue attacking, and then you'll proceed to the end step. After you've declared an attacking monster and the attack target for that monster, the attack might still not occur. Players can still activate cards or effects in response to the attack declaration with the selection of the attack target. If a card or effect changes the number of attack options you have on your opponent's side of the field, a replay will occur. If the number of monsters or if the number of attack options that you have on your opponent's side of the field changes before the damage step, a replay will occur, allowing you to decide if you'd like to continue to attack with your chosen monster into the same monster, or to choose another attack target, or to choose not to attack at all. If you choose to continue the attack will go through as normal. If you choose not to attack at all, your monster is considered to have attacked. If you choose to attack a new monster, you are not considered to be declaring a new attack, as you've already declared an attack, you are simply selecting a new target. If a replay has occurred, you cannot change the battle position of your monster later because it is considered to have battled. Ways in which the number of targets on your opponent's side of the field might change might be that they activate a trap card that special summons a monster, such as Call the Haunted. Perhaps your monster can attack directly, such as Zodiac Borbo, and you've declared a direct attack, and your opponent's negated your effect, meaning you're no longer allowed to declare a direct attack. So you now have to either select a new attack target or cancel your attack. Your opponent can also remove monsters from their field, using different card effects. If your monster can no longer declare an attack, the battle will end, but it is not a replay. So if your monster is destroyed by a card effect, you can no longer declare an attack, or if your monster is shifted to defense position, your monster can no longer declare an attack. But if you've already declared an attack, your monster is still considered to have battled, then you cannot change its battle position later that turn. So let's say we're in the battle step, and the game state is open. We are now allowed to take an action that does not start a chain. We can declare an attack, and if we do, we see if this activates a trigger condition. If not, we have the opportunity to activate a card effect. If not, our opponent has the opportunity to activate a card effect. If nobody does, we proceed to the damage step. So let's assume that we have the following 2 monsters battling. The monsters are XX Saber Gothams and Cyber Dragon. We are declaring attack with our XX Saber Gothams into Cyber Dragon. both of which are in attack position. Gothams is on our field, and Cyber Dragon is on our opponent's field. But we will proceed now to discuss a little bit more about the damage step. So if no cards or effects are activated in response to the declaration of the attack, no replay has occurred, we'll proceed to the damage step. These are some important things you need to know about the damage step. First, there's a limitation on what kinds of cards and effects can be activated during the damage step. Generally, it's counter traps, or cards that negate the activations of other cards, cards that modify attack and defense, that are quick effects, card effects that are triggered by a card moving from one place to another or having their battle position changed, mandatory effects, as mandatory effects must activate when their trigger is met, and cards that actually say they activate in the damage step. If you declare an attack against a monster that is face down, it is flip face up during the damage step. This is so you can determine which monster wins the battle and inflict damage appropriately. Any monster that has a flip effect will be activated and resolved after damage calculation. And because it's after damage calculation, there's always a chance that the monster that you would select as the target of an effect is no longer a valid target, as the monster would be considered destroyed during damage calculation. If you would like more information on the damage step, there is a link here, and I will have it in the description below. Let's take a look at the 5 parts of the damage step. The first part of the damage step is called the start of the damage step. Nothing really happens in the start of the damage step, except that there are some card effects that say that they activate during the start of the damage step, such as El Shaddai Construct, which has the effect that says, at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a special summon monster, destroy that monster. The reason this effect activates at the start of the damage step is because no replay occurs if a monster leaves the field on your opponent's side of the field if the monster leaves during the damage step. So a couple of cards have effects that activate specifically at the start of the damage step so that they prevent a replay from occurring. That way they cannot just attack another special summon monster with Construct. They're also now at this point in time allowed to activate cards or effects that are quick effects that modify attack and defense of a monster. Directly, not indirectly. So Forbidden Droplet is legal to activate at the start of the damage step, and you can also activate it in the next part of the damage step, which is before damage calculation. This is where a face down defense position monster who is attacked will be flipped face up, which means it's actually possible to negate the effect of a flip effect monster using a card such as Forbidden Droplet or Forbidden Chalice before damage calculation in the damage step. If a monster had a continuous effect, it would apply immediately at this point, and you can still activate quick effects that would modify attack and defense at this point in time before you enter damage calculation. If a Jinzo is flipped face up, suddenly all trap cards on the field will be negated. If Graf Mailbranch of the Burning Abyss was flipped face up, its continuous effect to destroy itself if you control a monster that is not a Burning Abyss monster might apply at this point in time. If it applied, Graf would be destroyed at this part of the damage step. If either the attacking monster or the monster being attacked should leave the field during the damage step, they'll proceed to after damage calculation and no battle damage will be inflicted. The monster who is attacked will be considered to have attacked, but neither monster will consider to have battled. So the attacking monster will not be able to choose a new attack target or change its battle position in main phase 2. The next part of the damage step is called damage calculation or during damage calculation. At this point in time, you would activate and resolve any card effects that say during damage calculation. You compare attack and defense values and determine which monster has won the battle, and decide if the monster that has been attacked or attacking is being destroyed, but do not send them to the graveyard at this point. Cards that might be activated at damage calculation are cards that specifically say they activate during damage calculation. The card Cyberdark Cannon says, during damage calculation, if a monster equipped with this card battles, you can send one monster to the deck to the graveyard. This card effect would activate during damage calculation. Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon says if this card battles a level 5 or higher monster, during damage calculation, this card gains attack equal to the attack of the opponent's monster is battling during that damage calculation only. If a monster you're battling would leave the field, from this point or onward, damage is inflicted normally. If the monster's left the field before this step, then the monster's battle would just end. After damage calculation is when you would activate and then resolve a flip effect, or any other effect that activates when a card is flipped face up, or when damage is inflicted. So we might activate Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear if it inflicted damage while declaring an attack. The effect of Shaddai Dragon to target one card our opponent controls and return it to the hand would activate at this point in damage calculation. And there are some strange rulings on some cards called There Can Be Only One, Goes in Match, and Rivalry of the Warlords that would then apply at this point in time after a monster is flipped face up. More details on these cards can be found in a separate video linked above. We then proceed to the end of the damage step, where we send any monsters that are destroyed to the graveyard. This is where monsters that have effects that activate when they are destroyed or sent to the graveyard will trigger. Any effects that apply to the end of the damage step stop applying as soon as we return to the battle step, where we can choose our next attack target. Cards such as B Buster Drake would activate at this point in time if we're destroyed by battle. So that monster we mentioned earlier, Utopia of the Lightning, would actually prevent pretty much every effect that can activate until the end of the damage step, because every effect that would activate when a monster is destroyed would occur until this point has already ended. Let's just do a quick rundown of the cards that can be activated during the damage step. So at any point during the damage step, you can activate either counter traps or quick effects of either monsters, spells, or trap cards that negate the activations of cards or effects. So Solemn Strike, Baron de Fleur, and Altergeist Protocol all negate the activations of cards or effects, so they can all be used during the damage step. If you had a mandatory effect that was required to activate and it met its trigger condition during the damage step, it would be required to activate. Sanguine's kind of a silly one to include on this list, because Sanguine would activate when it's destroyed by battle, which is the kind of card effect that's already included. UA Stadium has a mandatory effect to increase the attack of all of your monsters by 500 if you special summon a UA monster, so if this were to happen during the damage step, its effect would have to activate. You can activate cards or effects in the damage step that modify attack and defense, so Forbidden Droplet, and that's again during the start step and before damage calculation you can activate those types of cards. Trigger effects that occur when a monster's battle position is changed or it is moved from one place to another. So Sanguine would move from the field to the graveyard. Graf, Melbranch of the Burning Abyss would move from the field to the graveyard. So these are triggers that can be met during the damage step and can be activated because their effects activate when they're moved from one place to another. Or cards whose effect activate clearly in the damage step, such as a monster that's destroyed by battle, like Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon. Nirvana High Paladin has an effect that can activate when it destroys a monster by battle. It wouldn't make sense if you couldn't activate this card during the damage step. And as we mentioned, flip effects. Now there are a couple of other cards that specifically say they can or cannot be used during the damage step, even though you would expect them to either be able to be used or not be able to use based on all the descriptions we've gone over before. For instance, Thunder Dragon Titan says if a Thunder monster is activated during the hand, you can respond with Thunder Dragon Titan and activate its effect to destroy a card on the field. It specifically has to say that this effect can be used during the damage step because it actually doesn't fit any of the criteria that was on the list before. My Body as a Shield would normally fit the criteria of a card that can be activated that negates the activations of cards, which normally can be used during the damage step. But My Body as a Shield specifically says it can't be used during the damage step. Let's continue to discuss our battle from earlier. If XX Saber Gothams attacks into Cyber Dragon, that would be this example from the rulebook, which is determining damage outcome when you attack an attack position monster. Generally, if you're attacking an attack position monster, your monster will also be in attack position. Monsters in defense position generally cannot attack, although there are cards that can do so. So you win the attack if your monster's attack is higher than the attack of the opposing monster. You will win the battle if your monster that declares an attack against your opponent's attack position monster has higher attack than their monster. Their monster will be destroyed as a result of battle, and the difference in attack value will be dealt to your opponent as damage to their life points. If both monsters have the same attack, both monsters will be destroyed, with the exception that monsters with 0 attack cannot destroy anything in battle. So if two monsters with 0 attack both attack each other, neither one will be destroyed. But if both the monsters have exactly 1 attack point and they battle each other, they'll both be destroyed. But neither player takes any damage because there was no surplus of damage dealt to either player. If your monster attacks and your opponent's monster either becomes larger than yours by a card effect, or yours was actually smaller than theirs, your monster will be destroyed by battle, and damage will be dealt to your life points, equal to the difference in the attack values of both monsters. So in the scenario of X-Saber Gothams attacking Cyber Dragon, since our monster is larger, we'll inflict 1000 damage to our opponent's life points and their Cyber Dragon will be destroyed and sent to the graveyard. If we were to use our XX-Saber Gothams to attack a defense position El Shadal Construct, things would go a little bit differently. First, if we declared an attack against El Shadal Construct because of its effect that activates at the start of the damage step, X-Saber Gothams would be destroyed. We would not make it to damage calculation to determine the winner of the battle, unless El Shadal Construct was face down. If El Shadal Construct was face down, and we declared a battle against El Shadal Construct, the start of the damage step is not where El Shadal Construct would be face up. It would be face down at that time. So before damage calculation, we would flip up El Shadal Construct that would not be able to activate its effect to determine. It would not be able to activate its effect to destroy the special summon monster it was battling. And we would. So let's see how battle involving a defense position monster works. If our attack position monster attacks our opponent's defense position monster, we win the battle if our monster's attack is greater than the defense of the defense position monster we're attacking. In this case, that is what would happen. At the end of the battle, El Shadal Construct would be sent to the graveyard and destroyed, but neither player takes damage. If a monster is in defense position, it protects your life points. If Gothams were to attack into a monster with the exact same defense as its attack, 3100, neither monster would be destroyed and no damage would be inflicted. Equal attacks can destroy each other, but an equal attack into an equal defense cannot. If Gothams were to attack into a face-down monster who happened to have more defense than his attack, such as 4000 defense, neither monster would be destroyed because a defense position monster cannot destroy a defense position monster cannot destroy an attacking monster, but the difference in their defense points and our attack points would be dealt to our life points as damage. If our opponent controls no monster, we can declare a direct attack. All the steps of the damage step still apply when involving a direct attack, it's just that the entire amount of our monster's attack value would be dealt to our opponent's life points as damage. Direct attacks tend to be the easiest way to get your opponent's life points to 0 and win the duel. After we complete that battle, we'll proceed to our next battle step, and we'll continue to repeat this process until we run out of monsters to attack with or choose not to declare any additional attacks. We'll then proceed to the end of the battle phase. The end step, or the end of the battle phase, is where there are certain kinds of cards that can be activated during the end of the battle phase, or during the end step of the battle phase. You declare that you'd like to end the battle phase, and your opponent says end step is fine. You can then activate certain types of cards. Specifically, the most commonly played card that can be activated in the end of the battle phase is Evenly Matched, which can be activated from the hand if you have no monsters on your field. You could proceed to your battle phase from your main phase even with no monsters, then proceed to the end of the battle phase, or the end step, then you can activate Evenly Matched. Infernoid Seismos also has an effect that can be activated at the end of the battle phase. It says if it battled a monster at the end of the battle phase, you can activate this effect. You can banish one card on the field. There aren't too many other cards that activate specifically at the end of the battle phase, but you can still activate any kind of quick effect in this phase, just like any other phase. But after both players have agreed to go to the end of the battle phase, you can then proceed into main phase 2. If you go into your battle phase, you must go into main phase 2. In the next video, we'll learn about chains. At the end of the damage step, we'll then proceed back to the battle step where we can declare an attack against another monster.